And welcome back, everybody. This is going to be the podcast number 3 today here. It's Jamie. You all know me, or you don't. Either way, if you're listening, you're going to get to know me. I'm going to be talking about some Doom stuff again with a good friend of mine. I've known him for, at this point, almost 15 years. He is one of the most recognized players in the history of Doom 2, as well as one of the most accomplished. He's also a major contributor to the game in various forms and preserving the history of the game on his actual website, even as far as preserving actual old leagues and demos that you can still download to this day. He's contributed money to the game. He's spent even to this day countless hours instructing new players on how to play the game, all the different tips and tricks that are with it. I would say he's one of the most vital figures in the game's history. And he is responsible, after all, for the Doom Bible. So I present to all of you my good friend, none other than Devastation himself. So let's bring him on in here. All right, there you go.
Hey.
Hey, Dev, how's it going, man?
Not too bad yourself?
Just getting ready for Thanksgiving, which is tomorrow. Here, obviously, you're Canadian, so that's that day's already passed. It's in October in Canada, right?
It is. We've already given our thanks. You're just a little bit later of giving thanks.
Well, it's never too late, man. It's never too late. And speaking of giving thanks, I should be thanking you for coming on to this podcast tonight because it was kind of short notice. And I know that you are a creature of habit and schedule, so the fact that you were willing to squeeze this in last minute, I really do appreciate it. I think the viewers that we have are going to appreciate this because what we have to talk about is actually pretty cool. Both of us are long-term figures in the Doom community. Obviously, you're one of the few people that exceeds me, and exceeds me by quite a bit, actually. So with that said, let's just get right into it. Let's talk about your humble beginnings, where it all began for... is it okay if I use your full name, your real name?
Oh, sure.
For Chris Devastation Felix. All right, talk to me.
I still shiver when you use the full name.
Excellent.
All right, so I guess where would you like me to start?
That's okay. Well, obviously, you're an EXE player. You originated from EXE. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely. I played EXE first before any of the ports.
So explain to the listeners then how that actually worked back in the day, because it's not like it is now where you just connect to a source port. It was very different. It was player to player back then. So go ahead and just give the whole little spiel on that from an EXE player such as yourself.
So, yeah, I was rather late to the game, actually, in terms of playing EXE. So a lot of the Doom 2.exe matches and games and all these LANs were happening in the 90s, of course, when the game was huge. Like, people were playing in universities, were having LAN parties. There was DMCon 95. Then there was, DMCon 1 and DMCon 2, which was Montreal and I believe Washington, D.C. did the second one there. This all happened in the 90s, and the game kind of died, we'll say, or the dead zone between 1998 and around 2000. And that's kind of when I actually got into the game. Mm. And it was absolutely by chance that I got into the game. Okay. So, okay, well, now we're going to go back to when I was a wee laddie. So, let's just back up a little bit. So, I never grew up with a computer at all. I was a console player. My mother was the manager of a video store, so I played like regular Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and I basically got any video game I wanted in the store. Like, I was there in the store, and I could just go to the shelf, like, I want to play this now, and I would play that. So we never really had computers growing up. But when I visited my cousin, who was about 12 or 15 years older than me, her boyfriend on the computer, the first time I seen Doom was at their place. And this would have been, I'll say, just after the Star Wars movies got remastered in, I think, 1997, because I was a huge Star Wars fan. And the two games I seen on their computer was X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter, which I got to play because I was a Star Wars fan, and Doom. And I always loved Doom. So I'll just skip a whole bunch of parts that, I seen it here, and there. But eventually, when I got a computer, I was a 486, my whole goal was, okay, I need to get Doom on this thing. Once we realized that a 486 in the year 2000 was not good, I went out and we bought a Pentium 120, And then it had a CD-ROM, so I could get Doom and X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter and everything running. So I competed in X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter because now I've got games. What's the first thing I want to do? I want to go compete. I want to go play with people because that's the type of person I was. I love competing with people. So I used to play X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter on Zone.com. It was the only place that you could play X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter. And there's a whole bunch of leagues and stuff. So we used to be on the MSN Gaming Zone. Did you ever play on Zone at all?
I probably did. I wanted to say it was Quake on MSN Gaming Zone. The original Quake, not Quake 2.
Okay, I know Quake 2 is there, actually. I'm not sure about the original Quake. I had never seen it. It might have been gone by the time I was there.
I remember playing online, and I had to go through like a platform. It wasn't like a source port. It was like you went on to maybe it was AOL. I don't remember, dude. It was so long ago. But I know I did Quake or Quake 2, and I remember this would have been in the 90s as well, and I was still very new to computers at that point. I remember playing CTF, and they were using grappling hooks, and I'm like, how the fuck do I do that? Like,
I'm pretty sure that was Quake 2.
Okay, they were like, yeah. You just bind it to a key, and I'm just like, what the like, 10-year-old me. I'm like, what the fuck? Bind what? So
bind to a key? What do you mean?
Yeah. So it's I'm familiar with it. I know what you're talking about. It just no.
Right. So MSN Gaming Zone, you had a whole bunch of different games, and you'd click, and it would launch The Room, and it would show you a whole bunch of like Game 1, Game 2, Game 3, and you could join or make your own game, and then you got like a list of players that are in the lobby. And you'd join the game and you'd launch. So we used to play X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter there, and I was familiar with how to play Warcraft on there. So, we used to fool around, play around, like we'd mess with the system operators and like the help chat and stuff, and get ourselves banned and all that fun stuff. And I came across this IPX Gaming. I'm like, what's this IPX Gaming? And you click it, and sure enough, launches The Room. There's like 2 people in this thing. And I never knew what it was for. And there was this guy there. His name was David Peace. And so this would have been early 2001, like January, February. Might have even been the end of 2000, but I think it was early 2001. And I'm like, well, what do you do here? Like, what do you play? And he goes, oh, you play like any game you want that uses like IPX protocol. I'm like, oh, that's like, oh, it's like networking, but you're doing it over the internet instead. I'm like, okay. So he's like, well, like what? He's like, well, you can play Doom. I'm like, you can play Doom on here? So sure enough, we'd launch the game, and I'm sitting here waiting for Doom to launch, and all it did was launch this stupid DOS black screen. I'm like, oh, that's odd. And I was slightly familiar with DOS, and I exited out. I'm like, dude, it didn't launch Doom. He's like, no. Like, you can do any game here, but it's going to launch the screen and expect you how to launch it. So he taught, type in, cd/Doom or whatever, and then, type in DM, and it'll launch this, and then you connect. Oh, okay, cool. And then we were in a Doom 1 game, and we played Doom 1 together. So the thing that people don't realize nowadays that when you played peer-to-peer, it lagged the frames. So if you had a bad connection, it would be like jittery and slow. It'd almost be like slow motion. Mm-hmm. But your shots were 100% accurate. So I played a little bit with this guy, David Peace. We used to joke around. I used to call him David Pieces after I blew him to pieces. So that's where we used to play. So just completely by accident that I ran into this room and then realized you could play Doom online. Otherwise, I probably would have never known. But it gets even more coincidental. So I joined this room, and every so often I would join this room in hopes to find David Peace or somebody playing Doom. And in May of 2001, I joined, and I found this guy, NCDS, who, those of you who may know him, he is a Finnish player, and quite a good Finnish player, a good Doom player, not just a Finnish player. So, and we talked to him, and I said, oh, I'd like to play some Doom or something. He goes, yeah, like Doom 2. And I'm like, oh, I don't have Doom 2. So he gave me the Doom 2.wad. The reason I played Doom 2 is because he gave me this Doom 2.wad. Don't worry. I went and I paid for it later. Don't worry.
So I want to cut you off just to highlight something. Back then, it was 15 megabytes. That's no easy feat back then.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Like 14 megabytes in early 2000s was just like, all right, that's going to be a couple hours.
I don't know if it was a couple hours. What would I have been getting? So I would have been cable. So let's say, I don't know, 40 kilobytes a second, maybe? No, maybe even less. Yeah, it was probably like 30 to 40 minutes or an hour, something like that.
And even
so he gave me
broadband wasn't huge yet, so you still have dial-up players at that point.
Absolutely, and dial-up was just atrocious.
Yeah. All right,
so luckily I had already switched over from playing X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter, so I'd already switched over. I realized 56K modem sucks. So anyhow, he gave me Doom 2, and we played map 1 game, and he beat me 50-2.
Nice.
So I'm just like, whew, okay. Wow. I mean, the only other people I've played are my friends who I beat in real life, and also David Peace, who we had very close games. I would win by a few, and sometimes he would win by a few frags. I was a keyboard-only player at the time. So then NC, what he did was he gave me a recording of him and his brother Esox playing. And I kind of learned how the G worked from watching that video, because I was like, well, how is the BFG hitting them? And I kind of figured, how to do.
Sorry about that, guys. We actually lost connectivity there. So the second part's going to continue on with his story. Dev really only talked about his prior experiences coming up as a player after learning how to use the BFG. He eventually gets into how he ran into Dominus and learned more from him. So we'll continue on with the second part now. And now we are back on. Sorry about that. Lost connectivity. So as you were saying, Dev, that's when you ran into Dominus, and Dominus taught you how to play, which is an interesting figure because that's a name that a lot of people, especially from my era, recognize, because as we started playing, that was, at that point, he had kind of already faded out, but we knew of the name. So go on and talk more about that now, because that's the part where we're starting to get away from maybe EXE. There's still some EXE left, but we're starting to get into the source ports.
Yeah, so I had played primarily EXE for a number of years, and that's where I learned to play and got the bread and butter and playing against other top players and other very strong players from the past. One of the things I really enjoyed is playing players from the past. Remember, this is only a few years. Like nowadays, it's like 25 years ago. Until you get to 1995 and 1996, where you had Thresh and Slasher and Galliu like winning these tournaments and things.
Right.
And it was late in 2001 that my favorite player came back. Like, I had read all of the profiles from Doom2.net and that Badco had done, and I really enjoyed Slasher's profile. And I watched a lot of demos of the past, so I was watching recordings of the tournaments from the 90s till I could learn and pick up the tricks and, how to play. And I always enjoyed Slasher's style. And late in 2001, Slasher came back. He joined up one time on IRC. Oh yeah, I think Dominus had told me eventually to join IRC, so I joined the Nightmare crew.
Gotcha.
And to me, as a player who was up and coming and just trying to learn, like, to have your idol like come and join the community again and get to play against him, like, that was huge for me.
Sure. So the Nightmare channel, if anybody's not familiar with it, was, and I think it's still active on QuakeNet. It's an IRC channel where a lot of the oldies kind of frequented back in the day, and at one point it was a very active channel, and you had what were considered the quote-unquote Doom gods who would frequent this channel. And I remember when I was invited to it, back then you'd see guys like Ocelot, Dev, a whole bunch of Finnish players, Turska, Atami. I'm going to butcher some names here because I'm not the greatest at pronouncing. I think his name was Tuomio, and then as well as Bodko, Fire. There's Life. I mean, there's so many names that I'm going to forget. So I'm going to stop. But yeah, I mean, very popular channel at the time. And like I said, I still think they're around. I don't know how active they are if they check it, but
IRC's still there, and some of the people are still there. I mean, like, Johnson was there, and Xenos was there for a number of years. Zolaras had come back. He was there. There was Ugwad at the time. Mm-hmm. Morpheus and Ogre Slayer was there. Tells was there. He was originated from there. Yep. Funny enough, the actual history of that channel is, and it was told to me, and I may butcher this, but I think it was 98 or 99. I think it was 98. It was actually IRC channel created for Slag to teach DF how to like speedrun. So it was mostly like a speedrunners thing, and then it just kind of grew that a lot of people from the Deathmatch channel, and because there was the Deathmatch channel and the official Doom channel, mm-hmm. and there's another one I think I don't remember it right off, but they had all gone to that channel, so it kind of migrated to that little niche group. And then, a lot of the good players had joined there. So this was a very good way to meet players and to get games. And we would just go, does anybody want to play yet? Let's go meet on zone.com, and then we would play some games.
So when we talk about that point, we're now getting to the point where, okay, you're no longer like a noob that's terrible at the game. You're, at this point, maybe even beyond an up-and-comer, you're established. At what point did you become, and maybe this will obviously be your mind and your perspective, but when did you become one of the top tier players? And how did the phrase Doom God come about? Maybe not as a consequence of that, but it feels like, if I remember, it's all related because it was like the great players of back then.
So that's what they used to call good players, and I know Badco used to always use it and call people Doom Gods or whatever, because Badco's slogan in every demo was, "When I grow up, I want to be a Doom God." And I think the title was cool. It was normally used to reference, the top players of the time, and generally, when you were able to beat other Doom Gods, you were considered a Doom God, or very close. We'll say close games.
Okay.
So the exact point in time is hard to tell. I can tell you when I confirmed it and had no clue. It was very much by surprise.
Okay.
But I can tell you the day I confirmed it. So I started playing in 2001, and Slasher came back in early or late 2001. Sorry, I think it was November of 2001. So against a Doom God, I would generally score about 20 frags, 50 to 20. So I was about average,
Right.
an average player. I guess maybe average was 25. So average just slightly below average, I would say. So again, Slasher, 50 to 25, Ocelot, 50 to 20, Dominus, 50 to 20, that type of thing. That would be my relative score. The good thing about Doom is you can really benchmark because it's more of a linear type game where, there's no respawning health and armor and things. It's all about damage output. So the better you get, you will see that in your frag score against players. There's still weird things that happen, like when you've got 3 players, like, player A will beat player B 50 to 20, but player A will also beat player C 50 to 20, yet player C somehow beats player B also 50 to 20, like very weird things. And that's how styles match up. But generally, so then I was, we'll say, an average player. The summer of 2002 was kind of I'll say, not many players were playing in the summer of 2002. Like, a lot of the strong players were just off doing other things. And Ocelot was away doing his military service. So I had played with a player named Ogre Slayer. And I was kind of teaching him how to play. I ran into him, and we were playing some games, and I was helping him. So we played hours and hours every day. I was still watching demos and trying to replicate things, but he was the only player that I played basically from, I'm going to say, like May until September of 2002. So the scores were about the same. So from my perspective, I was trying to get him to have a lower score, because that would prove to me that I was getting better, because I'm able to beat a player harder.
Right.
His perspective, he's getting frustrated because he doesn't think he's getting any better, because he's still making the same score against me, 20. So both of us are actually slightly frustrated. We've played each other, we're practicing, we're doing all these things, but the score's not changing. Neither of us seem to be getting any better. Until we realized, both of us were getting much better. So it was in September, and I actually pulled this up on my website to see if I had a demo, and I do. It was September 29th of 2002, so in September. Ocelot had come back. First thing I want to do, Ocelot's back, I want to play Ocelot. So I play Ocelot, and I was green. So in Doom 2, one player has an advantage over the other. On LAN, the green player is considered the host, and they basically have like perfect LAN-like experience. Indigo, or player 2, actually has a little bit of lag. So if you hook up 2 computers, and you've got green and indigo, and you can hit the mouse at identical times, green will always shoot first. Proven scientifically. You could do this. Doesn't matter how many times you do this trial, green will always win the firefight. Online, or on modem to modem, if it's over, I think, 40 milliseconds, it switches. Green actually has a disadvantage and indigo has an advantage. Don't ask me why this happens, but the higher the ping, the worse it is for green after 40 milliseconds. So around 40, it's like exactly equal. It's very odd. And I do not know why that happens, and I'm sure someone who really knows the code and how the networking works could tell you. I do not know that. All I know is the point at roughly when it's equal. Anything above that, this player has the disadvantage. Anything below that, that player has the advantage.
But this is online, right? Like, we're talking online when you play each other. So
that's 200 milliseconds from Canada to Finland, and I'm green, so I have the disadvantage.
Okay, and because you're the host. Gotcha.
Exactly. I beat him 50 to 49. So I'm freaking out. I'm just like, I just beat a Doom God. Like, what the hell? Like, oh my God, like, I can hang with these guys. So I was so happy that I won with the disadvantage. So anyhow, we played another game where he had the disadvantage, and then he beat me 50 to 36. So overall, we'll say he beat me, well, I guess, what is it? It's, I guess 99 to 86. Do the equivalency, it's like 50 to 42. So that's relatively within league of these top players, or with Ocelot. And then I found the same thing happen when I played Slasher and Dominus. and anybody else. It's like, okay, I'm now playing with these top players. Like, we're having very equal games. I could beat Slasher some days, he'll beat me, and so on. So that's the point in time I would say I became a top player, was in the fall of 2002, after that summer long of just playing with Ogre Slayer.
So it's funny that you talk about that, because your experience kind of mirrors mine, but the roles are reversed, because you were the first quote-unquote Doom God that I had ever played. And the biggest thing I take away from your story is almost what I take away from mine, and it's that when you're playing against players that are either similar to you in skill, or, you know, they're recognizably decent players, and perhaps you two are improving with one another as you're playing each other, it's hard to actually visualize improvement, because you don't have a real frame of reference, because you two are doing the same thing at the same time. And it's amazing how when you go up and you play against a known established player and you either beat them, and you don't even necessarily have to beat them, just make it close, and you're freaking out because you're like, oh wait, what's is he trolling me right now? Like, what's happening? Okay, let's try this again. Let's play him again and see what happens. And you get the same result, and you just get this budding confidence. And when you have confidence as a player, it affects so many things. Not only what you're willing to do in a game, but it gives you motivation, at least in my experience, to continue to practice, to continue to prove, to continue to hone your skill, because there's that part of you that's like, no, I can do this. This isn't wasted effort. You know, I don't know if you remember, but I remember it was sometime in 2005. It wasn't very long after I joined Sin, maybe even early 2006, you know, you were playing players and I had been hassling you to like, hey, can we play a game at some point? And finally you gave in. And we played D5M1, and we were playing a really close match. And like mid-match, I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, I thought I was going to be losing like by, you know, 20 frags, 30 frags, you know, and you ended up winning. I don't know by how many, but it was close. And then I asked you if you played Dwango 5 Map 7 with me. And I actually beat you there. And I was just like, what the fuck? Because the only real frame of reference I had against a top player at that point was Jakist. And Jakist, the first time I played against him, fucking smashed me. So I'm like, all right, fuck that. Not playing him again. Not even close. And, you know, I went back to practicing a bunch, and I finally had asked you, and it was the same thing. And it was amazing. Like, after that, you know, I'd play against Jakist, and yeah, he would still beat me, but I'd get a lot closer. I'd get into that 50-40 range. And it's like, okay, I could hang with these guys. And over the years, there'd be improvement. Now, my story's a little different because, you know, I had kids early at a young age, so I would disappear. But before that, you and I would even play at LANs together. We played in 2 of them, which we'll get to. But I wanted to throw that in there because it's such a similar experience that you had and that I had, and that you're just like, wait, holy shit, I could do this. And that confidence just fucking explodes. And then all of a sudden, you're hanging with the best players in the world, and it seems like it's a transition that happens overnight, but it's not.
Yeah, it is very odd when you actually kind of get that confirmation as you're playing. And as you said, you really hit a good nail in the head there, that one of the best ways to improve is to find somebody who's, you know, relatively competent around your level, and you just keep playing them, and both of you will improve. But it's hard to gauge that improvement because both of you are improving together. I'll just quickly jump. I mean, I've been playing a lot of Diabolical recently. Mm-hmm. And one of the things you do is, so I've set up a little duel group, and I've been playing some players, but one of the players I've played a lot has been a player from Mexico named Flame. And we play each other so much. We have such opposing styles. Like, he is super aggressive, and, you know, I'm not. But, you know, we play so often that now when I'm playing other players who I used to consider aggressive and would be equal to me, I have, like, played so much better because I'm expecting, you know, this, and I've practiced these types of things now with Flame. And now it's like, oh, this is just nothing. And, you know, people are just running into my rockets and shaft and everything. Mm-hmm. So the same sort of thing in Doom. And as you said, you were playing with players, and then all of a sudden you start to play some of the top players again. And it's like, oh, now I can hang with them. And you've honed your skills, not by playing the best, but by playing people that are around your level. Yeah. The other thing is, you know, watching recordings. I think that was one of the biggest things I did, is I watched a lot of recordings, and I scientifically looked at how the game was played in scenarios. Like, when I am in the BFG room with just the BFG, and my opponent has control of the map with all the weapons, like, what should both players be doing? So you watch tournament games, that situation comes up quite a bit. Oh, okay, Slasher always does this, Ocelot does this, Johnson does this. You've now got a subset of all the things both players are doing. which do you like the best? Which fits your style? And then when I started watching demos, so even before I got really good, I could watch demos of the top players and I'd be like, oh, okay, they messed this up, or I could see their mistakes. And then, so I was able to even improve on their gameplay by noting the mistakes and saying, okay, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Watch out for this.
Watching demos is huge. There's no replacement for that. I watched a lot of JKISS demos when I was really, especially in the late 2000s, when I got probably to my peak. But I would watch I'd watch JKISS, and I'd watch Sedlo. Sedlo by far was the most viewed player, because I loved everything about his style. I tried to craft my style around his. So you're absolutely right with that too. And as we're talking about these players, and we've kind of transitioned from, now at this point you're established, you're beating Ocelot, the big LAN. Talk to me about the big LAN. I believe it was in Washington, D.C., and was this 2004?
2003. So a little bit of a lead up there. So in fall of 2002, I was kind of a top-ish player. I really honed that in, and then I basically started writing the theory for the game. It was early 2003 that I actually wrote the Map 1 guide. Mm-hmm. And I think the original Bible either came out, I think, after the LAN. Yeah, I wrote the Map 1 guide first, which has never been rewritten and is still kind of just a random jumble. I'd have to go look at it again. And I wrote that guide because I wasn't sure I'd even be continuing playing. I had already reached my goal. I just got to one of the top players. That's good. Let's move on to other things to try to master. And then all of a sudden, the LAN comes up, the LAN idea. Mm-hmm. And Ocelot's coming to North America. It's like, well, wait a second here. I've now reached a very high level. By this point, in early 2003, I was starting to beat Dominus and Slasher very regularly. When the LAN came up, it was like, well, this is an opportunity, one, to meet a strong player, but we've never had a lot of good LAN representation from Europe and North America. And Dominus had committed to going, and Ocelot's committed to going, and I had to go. And we were basically, I'll say the top three at the time, just because, Johnson had stopped playing. I don't even know if Sedla was playing at the time, but there was obviously contenders.
Right.
So I'll say Ocelot being, at the time, recognized as the best player in the world. And I would say Dominus and I at that time would have been the top two, along with Slasher at the time, because Slasher had gotten back into it at a very high level as well. So I'm 17 years old, trying to convince my parents that this is a good idea to go meet people I've met on the internet to play a video game with them. It's quite a difficult concept to teach, or to try to get people to understand that don't use computers or understand technology.
Yeah.
And I won the fight, and they basically understood. I think I argued it enough that they kind of said, okay, well, maybe there's something to this than just playing video games sort of thing. So my dad actually came along with me to the LAN in 2003. He said, okay, we're going, but I'm coming with you. And to this day, it's one of the things I appreciate the most, that they allowed me to go, but also he was willing to come with me to make that happen. They weren't going to send me by myself, but he decided to come along. So, and Badco's mother kept him busy, driving around Washington to all these, monument places or whatever. So we get to the LAN, and the LAN was definitely not successful. But I'll tell you what an annoying, stressful trip it was to go there. So we couldn't get a ton of time off to go. So the idea was we'd fly in Friday, we'd have Saturday and Sunday, full days to play, and then we leave Monday. So very tight, just a weekend LAN. And so we fly out Friday morning. So we try to, maximize the time. At least I'll get there Friday, get everything set up, maybe get a few games Friday night, but then I got full Saturday, full Sunday. I'll be in top shape to play. The only players I played on LAN at that time was my best friend, Ice Dagger. He's gone by a few different names, like Vindication as well. So we get on the airplane on Friday, first time we've ever flown. And we get on this airplane and we go. And the night before, there were some problems in the Northeast. There were some major power outages happening all over the Northeast of North America and Canada. So ironically, we had chosen to fly from Halifax to Ottawa down to Washington, D.C., because going through Ottawa would save us and get me there an hour earlier. So every minute's counting here, right? So I'm going to get there an hour earlier. I don't want to go through Montreal. It's going to be an hour later. I want as much time as possible to play with all of these people. And Tells was going to be there. Me and Tells were playing.
Right.
And, Morpheus was going. And I played a ton of games with Morpheus, and I've seen Morpheus from the Montreal LAN days. And, of course, meeting Badco, and a whole bunch of people were there that I really wanted to see. And Ogre Slayer was there, too, actually. So, looks okay. We're good. We take off. The second we land in Ottawa, I'm telling you, the plane just landed, and we got off the plane. Vroom! All the power went out in the entire city.
Yeah,
All flights were canceled.
that was the big power outage in 2003. I remember that because that was a big
Yeah.
deal. You know, that it's 2 years removed from 9/11, and there were people that actually thought that that was a terrorist attack. That
Yep.
they had attacked our power grid, and yeah, the Northeast, New York, I remember losing power. I mean, even like the economic ramifications to that were significant, even for it being out for a short period of time. So I didn't know you actually traveled while that happened, which is like a cool nugget.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
It's set the Doom 2 history for Devastation, I'll tell you that.
All
So
right.
it was looking like we were not going to get out until Saturday now. And I'm telling you, I was so livid, I almost trashed this hotel room. Like, I was ready to just fucking smash shit. I was so pissed off. We managed to get there to Washington, D.C. finally. So we got to the airport Saturday morning. We didn't even wait around. Like, there was just nothing that was going to happen. They managed to get us on a flight Saturday afternoon. So I arrive a full day and a half later than I wanted to. So now I'm arriving on Saturday, and we're playing on Sunday. And that's basically it. That's all I get for my first LAN. And I've got all these players to play with, plus meeting Dominus. He made spaghetti for people. I mean, it was just, it was kind of crazy. So anyhow, I'm mad. So yeah, I'm getting to a LAN where I'm supposed to be playing with the other top players, and you know, I'm stressed out. I guess I'll say a very tiring experience of travel. So big LAN, a bunch of games. So me and Dominus were playing, and Dominus was always a fan of very fun games. So Ocelot had kind of taken a bite out of Dominus before I had arrived, even. So Dominus played some very, very serious games with Ocelot, very close, and then I think Dominus lost a bit of his morale, and then he just played rushy games. So we used to play games where, like, oh, you don't ever let go of the E key, like, just rush at each other's face. And he was really good at those aggressive games. And, we'd be shit talking each other and stuff. And there's videos of this if you go on Doom2.net, some of the videos there. And, he's like, you love it, take this, and blah, blah, blah. And we're just, like, firing around map one at each other. So we're having a blast. So it was a great time. Ocelot and I only got to play one game of map one, and it was unfortunate that I was indigo, so I had the disadvantage and he was green, and he was playing a great game. So Ocelot had actually practiced a lot in secret without letting the demos get out, and he was preparing very heavily for this LAN. He took it very seriously. And so this was my first game with him, so, seeing his new style for the first time. Sorry, Zanero just said something. Explain why that's a disadvantage for viewers. Are you talking about green and indigo?
Yeah.
We had explained a little bit
done that.
earlier in the video.
Earlier we did.
So yeah, green is not lagged. Indigo is slightly lagged when you're playing on LAN or anything under 40 milliseconds roughly. Yeah,
Correct.
because green is considered the host. Indigo is a disadvantage. So I think he was beating me 29-11, and I was just loving it because I was just smiling of like, oh my god, like he changed his style so much. And I was looking at this, and it was very odd. Badco was sitting beside me to my left, and all of a sudden my computer lost power at 29-11. And, that was very annoying. And Ocelot was very annoyed because to him, he's like, damn, like this was one of my best games. I just got to unleash my greatest new style. And, this idiot loses power in his computer and don't get to finish the game. And we never did get another map one game. And, he was a little bit demotivated from playing. And, we played SSL2 and Judas. I don't even know if we got a Dwango 5 game, and I definitely got Dwango 5 in with Toke and with Dominus. So it was very unfortunate that we didn't get to complete the games. And I know Anders Johnson took a big bite out of Ocelot about that. Like, he was so frustrated. He's like, you guys flew to North America. We want to see games between you two, and you fuckers played half of the game, won't release it, and that was just it. Like, what the hell? So that was unfortunate. I mean, I did spend the night reviewing the demo, and I knew what I was going to do against him the next time we had played, but it just never happened. And we had played some games after that on Zone, but we kind of lost our opportunity there. And of course, with me not having a lot of time there on the LAN, it was definitely a missed experience in terms of getting real games on LAN with Ocelot.
Fear not, you would make up.
Yeah, but meeting players, and this is why I go to LANs today. Like, meeting players that you play games with online is just amazing. Like,
yeah,
we just go there, you just continue the conversation. Like, meeting Dominus and meeting Ogre Slayer and Badco and Novotny, Toke, like all those players. It was just great. And Tells as well. I mean, I hate if I leave somebody out. Morpheus, I can picture where they all are in the room too. And there's some good funny stories here. So I will tell one, and people who've heard me tell the story before, it's going to be a repeat. But so Ocelot's new style was extremely conservative, like unforgiving. I will not budge. I'll sit here for 2 hours. I'm not going to budge until you make a mistake. You will come to me. So the game is played to 50 frags, so there's no time limit. So very unforgiving, because the person rushing generally has a disadvantage. Although we did seem to disprove that a little bit in later years. Theory did advance a little bit, and there's a certain period of time where the defender becomes, I'll say, less aware. And if you launch a very fast attack very quickly at an unpredictable time, you can still take a little bit of that advantage away from the defender.
Sure.
So there's still some room for aggressive play, but it has to be well timed. So anyhow, he's playing a game with Novotny. So when Ocelot plays a game, he is super serious. Like, you could probably take the chair from under him, and his body would still be like the chair's still there. Like, he just would not move. Like, he's focused. He's a killer. So anyhow, Novotny, we'll say a little bit of a weaker player compared to the top players. Still a good player in his own right. I mean, he beat me, I think, in map 5 by a frag. So anyhow, he's getting annoyed at Ocelot of this style. So he comes over. So we're all sitting around, or standing around Ocelot. Ocelot's sitting down playing. There's like 5 or 6 of us just watching him play here. He's concentrated. He doesn't know anybody's around him. Novotny, who he's playing against, gets up from his chair, comes, and he's sitting behind him watching him for about a minute or two himself. And then he taps him on the shoulder. I'm telling you, Ocelot, this is like a, who the hell just touched me when I'm playing a game? And he turns around and he realizes it's his opponent. Novotny says to him, "You can't get me that way." And of course, Ocelot, knowing his opponent is not at his computer, he just shouts back to him, "You better get back to your comp!" And he's like running around looking for him. Oh, it was just so funny. Like, just the accent and the whole, like, who just touched me while I'm playing is just, it was hilarious.
That's a good story. I've heard similar ones too about people playing against Ocelot, such as they went and made a sandwich and came back and he was in the same place, he didn't budge, that sort of thing. Those are all good stories, you know. Obviously, the one you're telling is based on truth. The one I'm is, you know, conjecture. But maybe there's...
I don't know, man. I think Chewy might have went and nuked a few hamburgers one game.
When we're talking Chewy, anything's possible. That guy loved hot dogs too, by the way. Shout out to Chewy.
Good old Chewy.
So
yeah, there's some good times at that land. I got attacked by Toke with a pillow. God rest Toke's soul. You know, Toke was a good guy, and he was funny. And yeah, he attacked me with a pillow and a flashlight in the middle of the Saturday night.
That sounds like a porn gone wrong, but we'll leave it at that. I'm giving you a hard time. I think in all of that, I mean, I'm sure there had been other lands, but in my mind, that was probably the biggest land that Doom had experienced at that point. Would you say that's true?
No, I don't. Well, it's hard to say. So, in terms of, if you want to talk about in terms of raw skill, yes. Absolutely.
Yes, not big like size, but big in terms of significance. Yeah, because you had
definitely 3 top players in the world there, as well as players like NC, who's an extremely good player. Tells it was no pushover. No, Tells eventually became extremely strong, but even then, he was no pushover at this land. So in terms of raw skill of the game overall, yes, that was pretty big. That was, I'm going to say, almost close to a pinnacle. Mm-hmm. That was big. Only because of the advancements that we did in 2001 through 2002 through 2003, which built on the 1996 style. DMCon 95, which Thresh won against Stoney and Murloc, those would have been the best players, obviously in 95. The skill was definitely eclipsed by then. Yeah, 1996, sure. DMCon 1, you had Slasher and Galliu and Burnout, who are top players in the world. I think Slasher and Galliu were the top, I'm going to say top 2 in the world at that point in map 1. DMCon 1 featured them as well as players from the DC area that were very strong, like Cruisin' and Ronbob. And I think it was actually Cruisin' that won the D5M1 tournament. And then in DMCon 2, you had the same set of players, Slasher, Galliu. I don't know if Burnout went in DMCon 2 or not. But you had like, Galliu's favorite player, Leprechaun guy. I think his name was the Leprechaun. Great map 7 player. I'm going to have to look that up. So, 96, 97 had some really great players as well. 2001 was the Croatian land, which is Sedlo and FX, and I believe Mayo, and maybe even Biolio was there. I mean, they're no pushovers either.
No.
So, I think the 2003 might have been a pinnacle, but there's definitely was some very strong lands before then.
Sure.
So 2001 land, the Croatian land, was the first time I think we really saw Sedlo play. Definitely the first time I saw Sedlo play. But I remember people in Nightmare talking about it. Like, they were trying to evaluate Sedlo's play. And he was very good with the rockets. And I remember the argument was like, oh, he seems to use rockets a lot, so it can't be that good. And then I remember Johnson and Oso, I'm like, did you see the pinpoint precision of those rockets were going? That's some pretty precise stuff. Those are very controlled rockets. And as we know, Sedlo obviously was a top player.
For sure, yeah. Very controlled. Everything he did was very controlled. For me, he is the smoothest player I have ever seen play. I mean, don't get me wrong. Obviously players like Ocelot and Chewy and yourself, very, very good J-Kist. But Sedlo just made it look easy. Like, he made it look like, I could do that too. I could do that too. It's not so bad. But then you try and be like, oh, shit. Like,
yeah, Sedlo is, I'm going to say Sedlo has the perfect balance between fun and sporting and good. You could easily say that my style, as well as Ocelot's, is a little bit unforgiving, where we are very plus back and we're willing to camp out our opponents and take every little advantage. Sedlo balances that with, yeah, I'm going to rush you here and take my chances. I think he's gone more aggressive in recent times, but I always felt that he had the more... The proper balance of sporting and fun. It wasn't the best style, because I think Ocelot's style was the best, at least at the time. In Doom 2.exe for sure. Once you get to the ports, that's a different story. But I think Sedlo was always the more sporting of, I'm serious enough and conservative enough, but I'm not going to be that much of a bitch.
No, I think the better, maybe not the better way, but a good way to put it, is that Sedlo was the type of player that did not care about games and their results if it wasn't like an official tournament match. In other words, Sedlo would sit in a server and he would play 5-6 hours straight. Didn't give a shit about who won or lost, just had fun playing. Especially if he's going against somebody that he considered to be not even necessarily of equal skill as him, but even close. He did that with me. I remember at the time in 2006 when I was trying to learn map 1 gameplay, and he wouldn't let me leave. Like, you'd be like, no, you're going to keep playing. He's like, no, you have too much potential. You're going to keep playing. And I grew very close with Sedlo at one point because, everything about his gameplay is something that, the precision, the smooth movement, the fast movement, the chasing style. Like, if you look at my D5M7 play, which, isn't really that big of a deal in my mind because it's just two big squares, but that's where I built that, like, chasing, like, please leave me the fuck alone and stop chasing me style. Like, and it was Sedlo. And it was, except, he's doing that in Entryway as opposed to Dwango 5 Map 7. And that kind of transferred at the time, just to give everybody a little bit of insight. We had this belief, and I still actually think it's true, that if you could play Entryway really well, that generally transferred to all of the other standard maps at the time. But if you were good at other maps, for example, that didn't necessarily transfer back to Entryway because the fundamentals of the game were so important in map 1, Entryway, that if you were bad fundamentally, you would get exposed in that map. If you were bad with a strategic approach, you would get exposed in that map. Whereas it's a little less forgiving in maps like Dwango 5 Map 1, Dwango 5 Map 7, Judas, SSL 2, King 1, various other maps. But in map 1, that's not the case. So, that was the type of, I don't know if he was a teacher, but, that was the type of game that I would get from him. And, he was just as high on you when he would win as he was when he would lose. Like, I remember I beat him one time and he was like, yo, great fucking game. But then it's like, there's no time to stop and celebrate. There's no time. Nope, we're starting again. Let's go. Oh, we're doing this? Yep, we're doing this. And that's just how he was. And he was capable of slowing down and playing seriously. But I think more than anything, he's one of the few guys I think that just legitimately loved playing and did not care. Like, he could turn his brain off and just play. Yep,
no, I think you're right. So when we're talking about map 1 and the skills translating, map 1 had a really good balance because it was very strategic, but every weapon had a use. Like, the rocket launcher had good use, the plasma had good use, the chain gun had a use, shotgun, obviously, BFG, obviously, every gun had a use.
Yep.
And you also had to know what you were doing in the map. Otherwise, you would just get crushed. You had to have good movement, otherwise you would stop and you'd get crushed. So it did teach a lot of the fundamental skills that are required. So other maps, they have their own style, but so Dwango 5 Map 1, you start with a super shotgun. So you don't have to fight for the weapon. In
No.
map 1, there's certain spots where you have to fight to figure out what am I going to do with what I have so I can get to the freaking super shotgun and get that weapon, just so I can increase my presence in the map. So you were fighting for every little edge. Dwango 5 map 1, you don't have that. Everyone starts with a shotgun. So what are you playing for? You're playing for out positioning, some BFG play, there's the hallway portion, there's the out portion. Aim plays a much bigger role. There's still a use for rockets. There's still a use for a chain gun. I don't think there's really use for plasma.
BFG ammo.
But,
that's it.
Yeah. So, but it was different because you started with the super shotgun. You knew everybody started with the super shotgun. So the focus of the map had changed. Judas was very quick. Every weapon still does have a use, though, but in a different way because it can be used aggressively. I think Judas is one of the only maps that you can super seriously use the rocket launcher as an aggressive weapon in Doom.
Yeah.
Even off the spawn, got a rocket launcher, bang, 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 and I'm going to hit some hits on you. SSL2, there's only 2 super shotguns, and one of the main objectives is controlling them.
Yeah.
Making sure your opponent doesn't get it, or if they do get it, you need to deal some friggin' damage. You do not want someone to get the super shotgun untouched.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So, each map has its own style, but, I think map 1 really had the whole chess braininess of you have to think about every situation you're in, every spawn, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Whereas the other maps, they're a little bit lighter, but in some ways on the strategy's different, I guess I should say, but it tests different skills in different ways, which is not a bad thing. I've always disagreed with map 1 is the only map that matters, because that's the way it used to be until 2004, 2005, I think. Only later did we finally, start to adopt like map pools that, we should have a map pool of 5 and things like that modern games have done.
Yeah. And I think with map 1, I mean, if we look back in hindsight, this was a map that was made in 1993? And it wasn't 4. Yeah, you're right. Wasn't even initially made for deathmatch. And at a deathmatch level, the map has its fundamental flaws like any map will. But that doesn't mean that those properties don't remain with you as a player. And I think at the end of the day, that's an important thing. And there still is a love affair with the map. I still love playing the map, even though, like, if we're being honest, there are so many more better maps out there now. But there's just that old feeling, that startup doom 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 doom, and it's like,
yeah, I like the music. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, you get into that. You get into that doesn't exist in newer maps. So it's like, despite the fact that a lot of these maps are dated and they have their issues, I do think that from a historical standpoint, people need to understand that for a very long time, these were the traditionally, competitive maps. Nowadays, you still see them in tournaments. It's still the standard, but we have a much, much, much more open mind, especially to various styles, but it depends. And the game has transitioned. That's probably for a later discussion, but just for people to understand now, at that time, as you had said, map 1 was the end all be all, and then by about 2005, 2006, because I remember that was the point where I started getting really good. We were getting away from that. I was still at the point where I needed to improve in map 1 because you'd only be taken seriously if you were good there. But by about 2006, 2007, that mindset had been abandoned entirely, and people focused more on Dwango 5 map 1. So you had Dwango 5 map 1, Dwango 5 map 7. Maps that had always been staples, but not taken as seriously up until this point. And SSL2, Judas, and then you had the addition of Dweller, the addition of, King 1. These are all old maps in their own rights. It's just now they're being taken more seriously. And this gets us into now the point where we start getting into the ports. And I know that you were a Z-Daemon player before you were on any other ports. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
Yep, no, I was told to download Z-Daemon. I did try out CS Doom a little bit, but I was told, Dominus said, download Z-Daemon 0.99. It's the CS Doom of North America or something like that is the way you put it.
Mm-hmm. And
yeah,
at that point, that would have probably been, 2003, 2004 for you at that point? Because
yeah, it was probably around there, yeah.
Because I remember I was a newbie in 2003 and 2004. But I remember the players, and at that time, you had been playing against the Bad Fishes of the world, and that was like the big North American contest at that point. Chewy,
yeah, it was
obviously, very good at that point too. Hi Django at the time was the name I think he was using.
He'd used a whole bunch of different ones.
Yeah. When I was around, he was going under Hi Django. But obviously, he's never used the same name. He's always some weird name. We all just call him Chewy, by the way. So It's just chewy. So let's talk about Z-Damon, because now things have changed. You know, the rules have changed. You're no longer having indigo versus green, so you're no longer having, you know, a lagged player versus an unlagged player. Now, well, effectively both players are lagged because we're playing on ping.
Yeah, nobody gets to hit their shots.
Yeah.
It's all just shoot and fucking pray.
Which is a different can of worms. And look, to be clear, there's no perfect answer for this. And we were working with people at the time.
There's a perfect answer. Get on an airplane, get on land.
Well, the problem is even like Z-Damon LAN still had its issues. I mean, you remember when we landed in 2006?
I do.
We were literally getting blank shot. We were getting dropped shots on LAN.
Yep.
But that's just the way that they had coded it at the time. I still think you would get the same thing. I don't think that would change.
I do not know about Z-Damon. I can tell you Odomex in terms on LAN, in terms of the shots, it's good. I think Jakis will agree with me. That's the part that he's okay with. Like, it feels good on LAN. He has, of course, equipment issues, etc. But I think that part works. And even J Warrior, when we had played on LAN, and he was very impressed with how it worked on LAN. And I've always been very impressed with how Odomex has worked on LAN. So I don't know. I've never tried Z-Damon on LAN since 2006 when we played, or 2007. Sorry, the last time we played.
That was the last time we played on LAN.
Yeah, so I don't know how it would react. I would like to try it. Same thing, and I think I would try Xandronum on LAN as well. Just never had the opportunity or the time to do it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I would say Odomex. And now we're breaking into the point when we're talking about Z-Damon. We're talking about the three big source ports. Now, at the time in 2004. There was Z-Damon, there was CS Doom. I think Skull Tag was in its infancy at that point, but it wasn't really established. Z-Damon was the established port at that point, and really went on to be the established port for about another 8 to 9 years. And then Odomex kind of took over in 2012, and it had its issues, but, you know, it is what it is. And now, at this point, Xandronum, which is formerly Skull Tag, we have Z-Damon, Xandronum, and Skull Tag, and then you have all these other various like different versions of Doom, which I'm not even going to begin to get into. But what I'm going to say is that all of these ports have their strengths and weaknesses. I think Z-Damon by far has the best mouse code of any of them. I love their mouse. I think it's the best. I think Odomex has the best net code. Even at 150 ping on Odomex, my shots still hit and feel good. But And it's gotten better on Z-Damon, but Z-Damon has used some voodoo to do that, where higher ping players actually have an advantage. So
I wish I was you and could feel okay with 150 milliseconds. I'm telling you, put me at 50 milliseconds or higher, and I'm pulling my hair out here.
All right.
And I think that's part of because I learned on Doom 2.exe, right?
Yeah.
So I've learned and mastered like this specific situation. This is what both players should be doing, and this is who should win that encounter unless there's a stupid miss.
Yeah.
The thing that always annoyed me about the ports is, at 80 milliseconds, you cannot guarantee that every single shot you hit actually does hit. So the problem is you're starting to change the theory.
Yeah.
Whereas I should be able to do this, and I should win this engagement because I do not miss this shot. Until you give me an 80 millisecond ping and my opponent is flipping around with, 100 millisecond ping or whatever, then it's like, oh, okay, now I no longer win this engagement every time like I would if it was LAN, because I don't hit my shot because I can't trust the program to hit my shot. So as you said earlier, I now lack confidence that I can hit all my shots. You start adjusting your play. It's extremely annoying.
Yeah, well, and it's the direction we went, right? Like we went from one.
And you have to. That's the direction you have to go. Like you can't play peer to peer. As much as I joke around just to irk people and say that peer to peer is the best, I personally would still play it today. But it's not a marketable. Like you can't get hundreds of people playing peer to peer. They're gonna look at you like you're idiots. Yeah. Everyone prefers the client server. That's what all games use nowadays. That's the direction we had to go. It's the direction we should have went, and it's the direction we did go.
And
so, as much as I dislike it, it's the way we had to go, obviously.
Well, and from my experience, having competed at 2 LANs and then watching, you compete not only at LANs on Z-Damon, but LANs on Odomex with tournaments with QuakeCon. In my experience, generally the performances aren't very much different. Like, you might play different on LAN, but so is your opponent. Or your opponent's going to play different, rather. You're going to play better on LAN. And typically what I have found is, okay, the same scores that I get against you on online are typical of what I'll get on LAN. The difference is on LAN, theoretically, you should be having no bullshit because you're not dealing with connectivity issues. Now, of course, there are so many other different things at play when we talk about the game's actual code and what the game's actually capable of doing and how they string the game together. That's another conversation. I'm not even touching that because, frankly, I think to get into that conversation is opening a can of worms where people are going to say export has this going for it, export has that going for it. They all have, at this point, I just tell people they all have their strengths and weaknesses, and if this is what you want, this is what you can get out of it, and this is where you go. So getting back into our timeline, as we were discussing with Z-Damon, I had already talked about when I had met you in 2005, and you and I had actually, I liked you a lot. I did. I mean that sincerely. But you had made yourself a bit of a target because you are unapologetically yourself. And no, there's nothing wrong with that. I admire that, actually, because you are that way to a fault, to the point where, like, it's at times to your detriment because your ego is massive, which, again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that in a game, because you're not lazy because of your ego, you're driven by it. And for that reason, you are often a target of other people, and you're very outspoken. You still are. But again, I have nothing against any of those qualities because I don't think, like, you're a bad person either. It'd be different if you were like piece of shit human being. Then I'd be like, okay, well, fuck you, Dev. But you believe what you believe and you stick to your guns. And at that point in 2005, 2006, I had become your friend. I had, we traveled to Brampton, right outside of Toronto, Ontario, to play in a LAN. There were some pretty good players at that LAN in Lanada. There's me, you, Arrogance, Wrath, Shadow Ghost, Domains. Niv, rest his soul. And you took first place, I took second place, and then I flipped it on you in Halifax, in 2007. I took first place there, and you took second, but that didn't have... The talent pool there in 2007 wasn't as deep.
Yeah, 2006 was strong. And, Arrogance and Shadow Ghost were very, 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 very strong. And, of course, yourself was extremely strong. Niv was kind of just coming back, but he was still very strong, too.
Yeah.
And, that was a very tough tournament to win.
That was fun, too. It was a lot of fun. Truth be told, despite the fact that these are, technically accomplishments, I don't even really talk about what places I took in those tournaments because I just had more fun meeting you. And you had talked about this earlier about when you met the people that you had met at the LAN in, Washington, D.C. It's funny. You meet these people in person and it's not weird at all. It's not awkward at all because you guys have talked before. You've met each other. You have similar interests. And yet it's so normal. I remember meeting you. It's like, hey, Def, hey. It's like, this is the first time we met. Like, hey, want to eat?
No, it's true. And it's true. And it's the funnest thing. Like, as much as I want to say that, I'm a hard ass and it's all about the business of going and landing and winning and playing your best and doing your best and for the tournament. I mean, I'll say that until I get off the plane. It's like, I did! Give you a hug or shake your hand or whatever we do. And, it's just so great to meet and just hang out with people in a real life setting, like restaurants, paintball, all of those fun things. Oh, it was laser tag. It was laser tag, not paintball. Yeah.
We thought about it. We came very close, but it was laser tag.
Yeah. All those fun things. And even my experiences at QuakeCon, it's just absolutely amazing to meet players. And I've always enjoyed that aspect. And it's one of the things I'd love to continue doing more and more. Like, you meet so many people, and as you said, you share interests, and I treat people that I meet on the internet and I've never met in person the same way as I treat my friends in real life. To me, you are real friends, and there's no reason to treat you differently. So when you just meet up in person, I don't find it awkward at all.
No, me neither. And so I do want to get back to what I was saying, because we're talking as friends, so it's so easy for us to get sidetracked here. But at that point in the mid-2000s, a lot of drama had swollen up around you. And it wasn't just your fault, because the community at that time was just littered with drama. We had cheating going around. You and I were very big, proponents of no, that is not acceptable. It should not be accepted. Cheating should be frowned upon at all costs. And most people would agree with that. But I think you and I were so very strong with it. Other players in our camp were as well. But this at that point, you had TC folks, which was a clan that had two of the most infamous cheaters in Z-Damon history, Natural and Dalek, that were going around and basically just mocking Z-Damon's administration, the rest of the competitive community. And they had a cult following build up, and then you had us versus, these group of players. And I know for me, at times it was very challenging because I was still trying to get better at that point. But you had already kind of starting to take a step away from Z-Damon and Doom in general. Like, you still played, obviously, but you weren't as invested in it that you might have been, say, 5 years prior to that. My question for you isn't, who was right or wrong or whatever, because that's ancient history. And I think all of us would agree that we could have done things differently in one form or another. And all of us now the people that we did not get along with then, all of us get along now. We're all on good terms. We'll all say the same thing, that we were stupid kids, and that's that. But I do wonder, did that have an impact on you at that time to kind of just take a step back and be like, okay, I don't really want any part of this like I did before, because I don't want to deal with the bullshit that comes along with it?
That was never the reason why I stepped back. My interest came in and went with many different activities I did. I've taken breaks from many different things I've done, not just Doom, but Magic the Gathering I've come and gone as a competitive player. Bowling leagues I've come and gone as a competitive player. Chess I've come and gone as a competitive player. It's just that I have so many different hobbies and so many different things that I want to do. I have to focus on certain ones, and eventually one of them kind of gets a little bit older. I move back and forth between them. So the cheating stuff never did get to me to the level where it made me not want to play. I mean, geez, I could just throw in an alias and go play. None of that really mattered. So I don't think any of that impacted my decision to play or not play. It was annoying because I would always fight for things that was, in my opinion, the best for the community. I think cheating did need to be absolutely denounced and dealt with instantly, because people who have a competitive mindset, what's the use of being competitive when people are going to get the same amount of fame by cheating?
Of course.
And I still absolutely despise cheating today. And your mindset as a competitor, your mindset as playing games, does reflect on you and even decisions you would make in life. Bobby Fischer used to say, a person who cheated chess is the same person that would pick a pocket in real life. And I don't necessarily doubt that. Some people will say, oh, it's just for the lulls and for the fun, and that's why I'm just fooling around or whatever. I think if you look closer and take a good look at yourself, if you're cheating in an online video game, it probably says a little bit about yourself. Probably something that maybe you don't understand.
I don't 100% agree with that. I think that would be true if the person was presenting themselves as a legitimate player. And I think for many cases when you had players like that, yeah. But I think they do. I think most do. Well, I think guys like Dalek, in hindsight, as much as they tried to... there's no way some of these guys weren't trolling. Like, some of the shit he would say... okay, there is definitely some troll in there as well. Absolutely. I remember when I actually beat Dalek once, and he's like, "There's no way you're legit. I'm reporting you to Raider." And it's like, come on, man. Everybody knows you're cheating. Everybody knows and you have the audacity to say this. Like, in my mind, you're a fucking troll. And in hindsight, like, that shit's actually kind of funny. But I agree with you. Like, nobody disagrees that cheating needs to be denounced and dealt with. There's a lot of reasons why at the time it wasn't, but there was a couple of things I think started changing it. And the biggest thing that in my mind was what really got us away from it was, at that time, there were really only two ways to be competitive in Doom. And it was LAN, which not everybody was going to do, or clan wars. And you would, your clan would fight other clans, and typically, you would jostle for any sort of advantage that you could get in whatever established rules you guys would have when you would go to war. There's a lot of problems with this, because typically you would get teams that would not practice in good faith. The DUI versus sin thing is one debacle that I've talked about with Rust extensively on a prior podcast. But basically what ends up happening in clan wars is that one clan tries to get a ridiculous advantage and won't play if they don't. So there's not integrity there. And dueling was starting, while it was still very popular, it was starting to take a backseat to capture the flag. The community was much bigger into capture the flag by the mid-2000s than they were into dueling. Duelist exists. We were still there. But man, CTF was coming along. And when you had the introduction of the Z-Damon Duel League and the International Doom League, that, in my mind, is the point where cheating... I'm sure it happened in both leagues. But because of video submission and demo reviews and suspected cheating would be taken seriously by both the Z-Damon, or not Z-Damon, but the Z-Damon Duel League administration and the IDL administration, cheating pretty much was no longer a problem at that point because of league play, which also gave integrity to competition, because now it's like, no, we're all playing under the same rules, and we all, when we get into this league, agree on those rules. So there's less bullshit. So in my mind, what really accelerated dueling and capture the flag play, like the gameplay just got so much better, was because of these two leagues. And it's a shame that we have Z-Damon Duel League, you have it preserved, but the IDL is not preserved. And it's a shame because there's so much competitive history there. And even though it's not on LAN, great matches. And you, like me, were a participant in both. You've taken second place in ZDDL. I've taken a couple third places. I've won a Master Bowl on the IDL. You have as well. And the WDL, the World Doom League, is the current iteration of basically what the International Doom League was back then. Do you think that is something that today, if we had, I don't know, maybe the right mindset, that we could ever get to a point where those leagues could thrive again? I don't know. Thriving is maybe a bad word because it's hard to, but I definitely think that was the best point in our history, was when those leagues were up and running. So let's start there, and then we'll talk about the history, or the what the future is for those leagues. But let's say, I'm saying, so to clarify, I am saying these leagues and their point was the pinnacle of competitive Doom. Discuss.
It was different. If we just focus on the duel, we had a lot of extremely competitive LANs leading up to the early, mid-2000s. ZDDL and the European Champions League did take it to another level. And I will say that those are probably the pinnacle outside of major tournaments that have happened in terms of competitive Doom. I think we've reached there again with some very big pinnacle tournaments recently.
Yes.
But yeah, those were good. In terms of CTF, absolutely, that those leagues were the absolute best. And, a lot of people gravitate more towards team games than duel. That's just very natural. People like team games. I hate team games. I hate having a team. I like me and myself, and I can blame me and myself, and I win because of me and myself. But no, I've obviously enjoyed the capture the flag as well. And yeah, I mean, the International Doom League and the World Doom League are by far the pinnacle of capture the flag and team game Doom competition. Absolutely. And in many ways, it was very fair because of how it was draft competitions. And I'll admit, at first, the reason why I never joined IDL at the beginning is because I'm not a fan of draft. I wasn't a fan of that because, and it does happen, but it's whatever. You could get drafted onto a bad team. You could accidentally get drafted onto a really good team, or someone messes up their draft and someone has an overpowered team. I always prefer tournaments where here's me and my team is entering, we will now compete with whoever else joined. That's the type of tournament I liked. But admittedly, the league did an amazing job. It was very balanced, and it really helped teach and bring new people up to speed. A second part of your question was, could these leagues thrive again? Absolutely. We just had an awesome World Doom League season.
That's true.
I think they could. The hardest part is getting people into the game. Doom isn't getting any younger, and not as many people are, into it. But we've seen massive people come back. The Multiplayer Doom Federation, there's 1,000 people in this Discord.
Yeah.
QuakeCon, a lot of people see it on QuakeCon and go, wow, I remember that game. I'd love to go play that. The mechanics are very simple. You don't have to practice hours and hours and hours to get the mechanics down. The mechanics are simple. To master the mechanics, that's a little bit different. But you can download, learn a very few quick things, and you can be in a game.
Yep.
Shooting people, getting some frags. You're not going to get completely shut out usually. So I think they could thrive again. I don't see any reason why they couldn't. There are still many players that are still around. There's still many players that are dedicated. I think the biggest problem is fixing the port situation. We need everyone, and it's going to be hard to get everyone to agree, but we're going to need people to agree that, yeah, this is what we play, and you know what, let's try to break down and share the community. So, as much as I am a naysayer against Zandronum, it does some good things and people like it. Yep. Some people are naysayers completely against Z-Daemon. You've got to give them credit. They do some good stuff. There's tons of people who also are naysayers and hate Otomex. You got to give it to them. They do some good stuff. And this is what I like about the Multiplayer Doom Federation is they run competitions, or they run events that are both friendly and competitive on all the ports to try to create one cohesive Doom community.
Yep.
And I'm fully behind that. And I think that's what needs to happen. Because otherwise you end up with 10 people that like port A, 10 people that like port B, and 10 people that like port C. And they just don't ever want to play with each other because they don't want to play each other's ports. I'm not playing yours, you play mine. Well, I'm not playing yours unless you play mine. But if you made a community and then say, this is where the league is, go play in the damn league. Maybe you shift the league around or something. I don't know. Or maybe you run certain leagues on certain ports where there's an advantage. Like, this port is really good at running this mode, we run it there.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's what we need to do to make it thrive again. I think the ability is there. We just have to do it.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and you're not wrong. For me, I mean, I just did the September showdown on Zandronum for the Prog Duel. And to be frank, Z-Daemon nor Otomex could run that because it uses 3D floors. It uses Decorate, which neither Z-Daemon nor Otomex support. So you're absolutely right that all these different ports have different things. And I even talked about it earlier where I said, look, Z-Daemon best mouse, Otomex best netcode, Zandronum most features. Like,
have you ever played Deathball?
Deathball, I'm aware of it. I got very close to playing it, and then I just didn't. I hear it's fun.
Yeah, so Ariel or
Farrellyn or whatever her name is.
Yeah. Farrellyn, yeah, whatever she wants to go by in whichever port. Well, someone stole her name. Anyhow, it's a long story. And yeah, I think she had asked me to play it in or whatever, and then someone had asked me, Zach, and I'm like, I looked at it, I'm like, this is really fun. Like, I'll play in the league. I had a blast. I thought it was great. And of course, I played with Ty. Me and Ty go way back on the CTF league stuff. I'm always with Ty, and I love playing with Ty.
Everybody loves playing with Ty.
I love playing with Ty. Ty is like the most famous Doom player. Even my wife knows who Ty is. She always says, because I'll complain about something. She's like, "Are you playing with Ty again?" I'm like, "How do you know that?"
Devastation, return the flag! No!
So anyhow, I loved it. And of course, Zandronum's the only one that has Deathball, but I thought that was a great league. And you know what? I even set up my settings. I even used uncap. I had my vertical aim on. I loved the league. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny. And talking to you, and it's an hour and a half has already gone by, which is crazy. For everybody to understand it, Dev and I have known each other for 15 years. We could talk for the next 10 hours and still have a million things we could talk about. So,
I think my mom still has your socks, by the way.
She could have them at this point. I don't think I'm gonna. I'd make a trip up there to see you and spend time with you, but not to get a pair of socks. And at this point, they've probably seen better days. But so there's so much that we could talk about. And honestly, this is not the last time you and I will do this because we will always have things to talk about. I do want to go into something a little off track here that's a little bit different, but it concerns us, and it's kind of been the popular talk in the competitive, well, not competitive, but the multiplayer Doom community. Recently, a video came out by Karl Jobst, a YouTube streamer that does a lot of analysis and history lore stuff on the various games, Doom, GoldenEye, all these different games.
Yeah, I watched some of his videos. They're good.
Yeah, and he does a lot of stuff on speedrunning. Now, he made a video about the quote-unquote greatest Doomer of all time. I'm going to explain my position on this. I want yours too, but I want to just kind of be fair to Karl because I vehemently disagree with what he said. In his video, he talks about Zero Master, which is, I think, unquestionably the best speedrunner ever in Doom, right? Like, from what I could see, in the things he's done. But Zero Master is not a competitive player versus player. He is just a speedrunner. He's never played in the multiplayer community. And Karl Jobst went on to talk about how he's the greatest Doomer of all time, and it's not even close. And to be fair to Karl, he also did say, I'm prefacing this with the fact that he's good across all the different games of Doom, Doom 2, Doom Eternal, blah, blah. But, from what I could see in all of those, he just speedruns. So I'm sure people in the Doom Eternal and Doom 2016 competitive communities might have a thing to say about that too. I think it's wrong because he, not only in that video did he not even mention the competitive community, he completely ignored it. And in his defense, he doesn't know a lot about the competitive history of Doom 2, but if he's going to make a proclamation like that, the burden is on him to mention it if he wants to make a fair point. The reason why I think he's wrong flat out is, number one, you cannot compare speedrunning to player versus player. There's just no, in statistics, what we do, and you'll appreciate this, Devin, statistics, what we do when we try to compare two different things is what we do is we standardize them. And there's 50 million different ways that you can standardize two different things when comparing them. In my mind, even if you could standardize this, you arrive to the second problem with the conversation when we talk about the greatest of all time. Another statistical definition here is what we use in stats, which is known as a working definition or an operational definition. It's just basically everybody is operating under the same definition of something. And when that discussion takes place, people say they are, but they never are operating under that same definition. And it just usually becomes a biased circle jerk for one guy. And when you're making it at that level of proclamation like that, in my mind, that's when it's a problem. Look, all of us amongst our friends will talk about who we think the best players are. I think Chewy's the best Doomer ever. But that doesn't mean he is. And there's objective evidence that you could bring up against that to say he's not. So when that video came out and he presented it as fact, it actually did offend me. Because it ignores what we contributed to the game for almost 20 years. I mean, 20 years. For me, almost 20. You know, we have had guys like you, J-Kiss, Ralph, Chain Dude. Chain Dude is another one that's forgotten in all of this. That have spent thousands of dollars. Not a few hundred, not 50, thousands of dollars in either running and maintaining servers, spending the time to maintain servers, in your case, preserving Doom 2. So just the time, you know, and then this isn't even discussing the time that we put into own our craft. And when a video comes out like that and it just kind of ignores us, I am offended by that because it just dismisses us entirely. I don't want to make the discussion about diminishing the accomplishments of Zero Master as a player because they're admirable, but I will absolutely say I seriously doubt he'd come to the competitive scene and have the same success. And that's not a knock against him. It's just you're competing against people who've been doing this for 20 years, brother. It's not the same. And so when I have this discussion and when I bring this up, I'm prefacing it with the fact that I don't even want to make this about Zero Master as a player because he's a great player. I respect the fuck out of what he has done and given to this game. But I think that discussion is toxic, and I think that video was wrong. And while I admire Karl and the content that he puts out, and I like it, I think it's wrong. And the only thing that I took away from it is that, you know what? We need to start telling our own history. So I'll let you kind of, you know, put your points out there, and then we'll discuss it a little more. So the floor is yours.
So I'm definitely not nearly as offended as you are about this. I mean, yes, he used the term best Doom player, and he called it across multiple franchises. I think it was very obvious he was taking it from a speedrunner standpoint in terms of speedrunning, accomplishments in speedrunning, finding, you know, many of the newest, you know, I'm going to get this wrong, like void glides or whatever to get outside the map. And obviously has shown a great level of dedication and precision within the game, within speedrunning. And you're right, that is the community where people see the most of. People don't have well-documented multiplayer Doom history. I've tried for years to do as much as I can to preserve as much history. I will throw out there that there is somebody, I'm not going to name him because I don't want to put him on the spot, but he's a very recognized streamer and caster who's doing a history of deathmatch of all Dooms from Doom 1 through Doom 2, Doom 3, Doom Eternal, or Doom 2016. And I've worked with him a little bit about what the history of what it was like in the 90s and early 2000s. So he will be putting out a big YouTube series about this at some point. And yes. I'm not going to name him because I don't want to put a fire under him, but he's not really from the Doom community. I don't believe he's more from the Quake community and another competitive community, but he's big interest in. So you're right. It's not well preserved, so it's hard, and it's very subjective, especially if a player is not competitive. It's harder to understand what's happening. You can look at tournaments, you can look at official tournaments, you can look at casual LANs. But the Doom multiplayer community is really kept to itself. And of course, as you said, many websites have been blown away. We don't have that history anymore. So it's harder to research. I'm not offended because he does things from a speedrunner community, and that's the community he knows, and he does a lot of research on. And I think Zero Master across all of the games is obviously to me the best speedrunner and has done the most. I mean, of course, there's Shock Blast that set that amazing 8 and E1 M1, and of course Looper is obviously very strong. Absolutely. And then there's King Dime is a great player as well, and I love watching King Dime go and do his runs. So He's very good. So I'm not really offended. Like, he doesn't understand the multiplayer community. He doesn't seem to do a lot of the multiplayer type stuff. It's much more subjective, as Zenero here is saying. Like, there's different ports now. Like, is it the original that you care about? Is it the ports? Is it the ports on LAN that matter? Is it the online tournaments? Online tournaments are normally seen as much weaker than LAN tournaments in every other competitive game. So how do you objectively say that? Like, oh, and then of course we've got the Atlantic split. Like, well, we don't know whether okay, Europeans seem to have more stronger players, but we don't really know. Have the top players ever met? Like, how often have they met on equal grounds? Europeans don't tend to come over to North America. When they do, sometimes they don't play. I mean, North Americans aren't going over to Europe. Like, how could you even say the best? Like, it would turn into a shit show no matter who you said was the best player, whether it's Ocelot or J-Kist or Chewy or myself. It doesn't matter. It was going to turn into a shitfest if you declared somebody as obviously the best Doom player.
Exactly.
From multiplayer. So I take it just what it is. It's from a single player perspective. You could also make the argument that Doom is primarily a single player game. Deathmatch was almost an afterthought. It just happened to work really, really well. And speedrunning has been around in the Doom community just as long as competitive multiplayer or deathmatch. So, you know, if you see Doom as a single player game, not as a multiplayer game, of course you're going to focus on that as the single player speedrunners. So, you know, I am not personally offended by it. So I didn't look at the video and go, oh, whatever. Like, you know, oh my God, how could he not even look at the community or like, whatever. It's just, it doesn't matter. And I do like Karl Jobst stuff. I thought he did a lot of good analysis. I like Zero Master stuff. Yeah. I will disagree with one point. So there is a little bit of crossover. So way back in the day, of course, Sedlo, obviously a speedrunner for Competent. Adam Hagee was a great deathmatcher, but primarily a speedrunner.
Sure.
Ocelot did a lot of good runs, so did Slasher. Even to this day, I actually hold a few world records in single maps in TNT, I believe. I think EV7 or 21. There's two maps. I think no one's beaten my Compet end time from years ago. So I also did some speedrunning way back in the day. So there is a little bit of overlap.
There is. I'll explain that position. Just continue.
The one thing I disagreed with you in your statement is you said Zero Master, if he came to the competitive community, he wouldn't be a top player. I would say not instantly. If you get good at something, if you become top level at something, you obviously have the learning ability to become good at other things, especially Doom, multiplayer versus single player. The mechanics are basically the same. He's going to know how to move. He's going to know how to move a mouse. What's he going to have to learn? He's going to have to learn from his mistakes in terms of thinking, the competitive mindset, etc. I would not say that he could not do it. On the same token, if you took some of the best deathmatch players and they wanted to spend hours and thousands of hours doing speedrunning, could they become good speedrunners? Probably. I'm not going to say that they'll become the best, and I won't say that Zero Master become the best. I think he could obviously compete in the competitive arena if he wanted to.
Yeah. So to address, so first I want to say with regards to how I felt about the video, I'm offended only because I feel like when you present, as I said, when you present that argument, you have to clarify this is from a speedrunning perspective, which he never did. But to be clear, I'm not trying to take away from what he does, because I watch a lot of his videos too. Like, he's a known YouTuber. I have nothing against him. I think he's wrong. So maybe offend is a strong word, but it's still, it made me feel some type of way because it was just like a complete dismissal of the competitive community in my mind. But you're right. There's also that you can look at it from the reverse perspective of, you know what, this is what he's talking about. Either way, it was still a very good video. I highly recommend that people go watch it because you still learn about a great speedrunner in Zero Master and all the accomplishments that he has. Secondly, when I talk about overlap, I don't mean to say that you can't do it. And I certainly think if Zero Master had the willingness to come here and play, I think he could get good. But would he run away with the competitive community the way he ran away with the speedrunning community? No. The same way.
Do you think he ran away with the speedrunning community? I mean, Looper and Shockblast, like, some of them people are on his ass.
They are, but
like, he comes out on top, but I don't know. I don't, like, he's got great achievements, but I wouldn't say he's blowing. I don't think he thinks he's blowing his competition away and he's the only great player.
So keep in mind, I'm going based off of what the video said. Because the video basically was like, it's not even close, it's not even a discussion. So,
well, I think if you look at all the achievements, yes, but it took time and effort to get those achievements.
Yeah.
But he had to beat out some other top players in order to make those.
But yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, but the point still stands regardless that I don't think it would be that way here. And the same way, if you or I decided to go speedrun, we wouldn't do it either. And that's what I said in the beginning. You can't even compare them because they're just two different things. Like, they're totally different things. I wouldn't even compare them. And like I said, and you and I are both in agreement, I would never make a video saying Chris Devastation Felix, best doomer of all time. Or Chewy.
You just need to go to Karl Jobst and ask him to do one on Deathmatch and research the stuff.
I think that's not, and we actually had this discussion on his Discord, and he pretty much just said, that's not my place. You guys know about it, you should do it. And you know what? When he said that, I'm like, you know what? You're right. We should do it. What's stopping us from doing it? Why haven't we done it? Because
we're old, biased people, because we're in the community. We're in it. We have our biased opinions.
Yeah.
He's an outside observer.
But
who does things objectively based on facts of what he's seen.
But see, so here's the thing. I would make a video series, or I would work on something, right? And I would do it, and I would say, look, this is from my perspective. In a way, that's what this podcast is. I don't frame anything that I say as fact. I frame it.
Look, you're lying.
Like, this is my perspective. This is what I saw. I mean, you and I, for example, have had great fucking matches throughout the years, right? Like, one interaction after another. I mean, it's been on LAN, it's been on leagues, it's been in competitive, non-competitive, whatever. But that doesn't mean that, maybe an outside observer would see that and be like, actually, those matches sucked. They weren't very good at all. But we both feel that way. And people and there's a charm in that where people like listening to it. But you are right. It's difficult for us to present the history as objective when it would not be objective because we are biased. But I still don't think that doesn't mean that we can't present and tell our stories, which is what I like to do. Like, I'm working on doing a video where, and I'm getting familiar with actually making videos and stuff because I don't know how to actually work with the software just yet. But I want to work on a video that just talks about Clan Sin. And yeah, like, it wouldn't be a huge video. It wouldn't get, 100,000 views, but there'd be enough of us that'd be like, I remember Clan Sin. I remember those guys in Z-Damon. Let's watch this. Or, and that would be from my perspective. Just like, you could do something about, hey, the 2013 QuakeCon between me and Jakis. Like, this is how it was. This was my perspective, right? Like,
I think I could, and I'd probably never show up at a QuakeCon again because I think ZeniMax or Bethesda would kill me.
Well, then there's that. But you understand what I'm saying, is there's a difference between presenting historical information as objective and non-objective, but that doesn't mean that one is more valuable than the other if, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is just talk about our history, especially since our history wasn't preserved, which that's the saddest thing. ZDDL and anything that you've preserved is pretty much the most well-kept place of history for Doom 2 that we have. For competitive Doom 2, that is. Outside of that, there's not much. Now, Jakist has all the stuff for the IDL. I actually have all the IDL demos now on my computer.
So that is something, because I forget who I was talking to recently, but there's somebody that was interested in archiving the IDL, like making a historic site about it. And I think my site was one of the spots that was labeled as a spot to put that. And if we have the demos and the scores, etc., I think we could get it done. Same with WDL. I have all of my demos. I mean, I've got every demo I've ever played since 2001.
Yeah, so we are missing some of the IDL demos, but that's just because
you just said I have them all. You literally just said I have all the IDL demos. Now it's
right.
I'm kind of missing some of them. Like, what is it?
But it's not because I'm missing, because I have what's available. You can't get the other ones. There's from
well, you don't know that though. Like, there could be sitting on somebody's hard drive that hasn't been in the community in a while. They could exist.
Well, that's known. Like, the demos that I have were pulled from all the sites that Ladna had operated, which was from 2008 onward. So they have stuff from 2007, but it's not complete. There's some demos that are missing. Now, I could go to Ralph, and Ralph, for example, will have all of his. I could go to Chain Dude will have all of his. But that doesn't mean that everybody has all of theirs, and that's not all teams, right? But even that is, like, still a huge collection of information that we could piece together. And I'm sure that there are ways where you could just run some sort of program to run the demos and calculate the stats and calculate the scores so that we don't have to go through and watch 16 gigabytes worth of demos to be like, okay, the score to this game was this, and the score to this game was this. That's a bit above what I'm capable of doing, but I'm sure there's ways to do it. Well, I don't know how to use the software. I don't know how to develop the software to do that.
What, to watch the demos?
Well, watch the demos for me and watch multiple ones at once, even if there was such a way that it could speed through it all and tell. Now, in Z-Damon, to be fair, these were mostly on Z-Dame. You could actually just fast forward through them.
You can just fast forward and get the scores. Yeah, that shouldn't be much of a problem. You know, the community will do this. Like, think about this. If you got 100 people that wanted this data, just say, you watch this demo, tell me what the score is, or here's the data to collect. And you can get it done. I mean, this is trivial. You can, you know, one person can do all 100, or each 100 people could do one, or 50 people could do two. It's doable. You just need to work towards what you're trying to do, and we could work on this. I'm more than willing to work on this. How do we want it presented? What data do we want to present? And then go and get that data, because you don't want to go through having to watch demos, get the data, and be like, oh, we should have this too, and then you go back and rewatch them again, or rewatch them again. I hate that.
Yeah.
Let's not do that. Let's just figure out how we want it presented. We can do some cool stuff, and then go do it.
Well, do you think there's, I mean, interestingly enough, like we did have a stats program that worked on Z-Daemon for the IDL. I mean, because it used to be presented on Z-Daemon.
Yeah.
And now for Otimex, I'm not as familiar with, but even
I can talk to some connections and see if we can build something if that programming no longer exists or no longer works, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Like the grunt work is no problem, because either people will do it manually or we'll find someone to do it automatically and get the data. It's the willingness of people and how do we want to do it. That's the real key. That's always the hardest part. Once you figure that out, going and doing it just takes time, but it'll get done eventually.
Yeah.
Where most things fail is not visualizing what you want done and how you want it done.
Which is true. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll start getting stuff together. I mean, I could definitely, even if I did something, for example, for the teams that I captained in the IDL, like just said, okay, here's all the scores and everything for mine. And then I'm like, all right, well, let me just do this, and then let me do this. So I'll take, I'll take a stab at it. Like I said, I've got all of them. And the cool thing.
Let's talk about it. We'll take it offline. We'll talk about it.
All right. So with that said, we are kind of coming up to the end here.
Let's
talk about what's next for us. The WDL is, there is a tentative start date for the WDL of January 18th, 2021.
Really?
Yep. Ralph gave it. I plan on playing on it and being a captain. I am actually already in better Doom shape now than I was all last summer. So I will be a much better player in a better position to compete. But I'm not ever going to say, I'm just going to say never. But for me, I think this is going to be it. I don't think I'm going to play in any competitive event after this, because I kind of want to transition into, a contributor to the community with videos, with WOD editing, with podcasts like this, for example. I just didn't like the way that WDL ended. It was fun to play in, but I was not good, and that bothered me. So as a competitor, I have to go out on a better note. So let's talk about, that's what's next for me. What's next for you?
So I've been playing a lot of Diabolical lately, and I built a new computer.
Nice.
So I built the computer using the RTX 2080 Ti that I won, and decided I was going to play a game, and I got wrangled into playing Diabolical.
Nice.
So I've been playing a lot of that and competing in every tournament. I think I've had like 7 tournaments this month. That there's various ones, and I've got the Pigeon Classic coming up on Sunday, followed by I'm in the Dash Bracket League, and then there's another Dash Bracket tournament on the 3rd of December, and then there's the official Diabolical tournament on like the 5th and 6th weekend. So there's a lot of stuff. So I've been playing mostly that. Haven't played a ton of Doom. If any tournaments come up, maybe. I don't know if I'm going to play the WDL. I'm sure after Ralph hears this, he's going to send me a message. Hey, come play. And I'll probably be like, okay. But I don't know. So I ran the M mode, the massive multiplayer online Doom experience thing for the multiplayer Doom Federation.
Yep.
Which was just a giant free-for-all thing. I wanted to do some other stuff on Otimex where there's like 50-player servers, like multiple 50-player at a time free-for-alls.
Yep.
But I couldn't really get any maps created for it, so that's kind of buggered out a little bit. I couldn't get anyone to make some, maps built for 50 players at a time. So I don't know. I'd like to do some more stuff in terms of guiding the community and helping them, continue with the documentation and helping the MDF grow. As a player, I don't know. I actually played Doom last night, funny enough, G4D2. He messages me to play every once in a while, and I'm like, you know what, yeah, let's go play some deathmatch. So we play Z-Daemon, and it was good. And funny enough, playing Diabolical, so I'm playing a few hours every day, maybe 1 or 2, we'll say. So, and I make my sensitivity the same in every game I play. So that's actually keeping me relatively up to speed of understanding of how to move a mouse, etc. in Doom.
Yeah, you're mechanical fresh.
Yeah, mechanically, I'm not too bad. The problem with the WDL is it takes time because if I'm going to compete in something, I'd like to give it my all. That means, dedicating 1 to 2 hours every night if I can to practice with the team, just practicing in general, getting in the top shape, competing, playing, scheduling the match. It's very difficult for 6 weeks. The last WDL really took a lot out of me. My son Jace, of course, is getting older too, so that takes more time. It's tough. I don't know. I'll have to see what's happening around Diabolical at the time. Like if there's a lull in tournaments over there and I'm at a decent level, maybe I'll play the WDL. There's still a good chance I will. It's just I hate signing up and not being able to give it my all. So I think when people draft me, they expect a certain level of competence. But I definitely had a lot of fun. It's funny. I played with Jay Warrior, and I think I played with him back to back in 2 different leagues, and I love playing with Jay Warrior. Because me and him, like, we think alike. So in the middle of a game, like, we're just like in the zone of knowing what each other's thinking and doing generally. So it's definitely a lot of fun, and I enjoy playing with the teams. So it comes down to if they really need players for it to run, definitely I'll play. I would prefer not to captain because that does take a lot of time, and it's a lot more time consuming if you have to captain.
Yeah.
So I'd rather just kind of be a player in the draft, and then someone just picks me, and then great, just tell me what I'm going to do. You make all the hard decisions. Whereas when I'm captain, it's like, okay, I got to think of the home fields. I have to think of this. I have to think, how is our opponents going to play? What's our lineup going to be if this happens? What's our lineup going to be if that happens? Whereas if I'm not the captain, I'm just going to say, hey, maybe we should think about things like this. By the way, it's your decision. Have fun. See ya. I think that's one of the things I do well. You referenced earlier that I do have quite an ego. I have a lot of confidence in my play. But if I'm not the captain on the team, I understand I'm not the captain, and whatever my captain says, that's the call. Like, I'm not going to argue with my captain. Like, that's the call. Whether my captain is weaker than me or not is completely irrelevant. Yeah. You're the captain of the team. I'm here to do my best at the job you give me or what you tell me to do when you tell me to do it, whether I agree with it or disagree with it. So it's a lot easier to just not be a captain. Whereas when I'm the captain, I have to make these difficult calls of, okay, when do I rush 3-0? We're down by 1. Yeah, it's a weird map. Lineup's not working right. What do we change for game 2? It just takes a lot of friggin' energy.
Yeah, it's so true.
It's not even just focus on the game. It's literally focusing on the strategy of how to play the game before I even play the damn game. So it does take a lot of time and a lot of effort. But so yeah, I don't know what I have in my future in terms of gaming. Obviously I'm getting older. I can't do this forever. I really feel like over the years I've literally crawled and climbed and scratched my way back to the top of the stupid mountain, and every time it gets harder and harder and harder. And one of these times is just going to be once I slide down, that's it. It's like there's no climbing back to the top. So I'd like to do what I can now while I can, which will be, I'm hoping, Diabolical, maybe if another Quake comes out as well. Whatever that I can do there. And then after that, I would just like to, go back and play my old RPG games and stuff. I may do a Final Fantasy Fridays thing. I've been really thinking about it. Like, I stream some Diabolical here and there, and I'm thinking of doing, one night I'll do ranked Diabolical. Maybe some night I'll do some free-for-all and Doom if there's something going on. And, maybe Friday, I'll actually relax. I'll play a game and relax. Something I probably haven't done in about 20 years.
That is the truth. Yeah. I'm with you. We're older players now, so the mentality is like, how can I drift off into the sunset? Like, how can I have my end? And for me, it's like you. I mean, I'm the opposite of you. I have to captain. I don't feel right if I'm not. I am a natural leader. I want to take control, and it was hard to do that for me last season because there are so many things and so many times where I'm just like, wait, I'm not the captain. I have to stop. And,
it's funny. It's funny you talk about sailing off into the sunset. I'll tell you, I've sailed off into the fucking sunset at least 6 times, and it's a very tiny planet. And you fucking leave one side of this Doom Island, and you're fucking back on the other side. And then I've landed. Like, wonder what island this is? Oh, it's the fucking Doom Island again. Yep. I swear to God, I just keep getting dragged back. What I should have done, and I should even do it now, is after QuakeCon 2019, I should have just said, "Fuck you guys." Just smash my computer to bits. You'll never see me ever again.
Yeah, we're gonna be around forever. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just think as a player, I'm good. There's gonna be a certain point where I say enough is enough. Because
I think we're gonna be listen. In 2006, you said we'd be playing the fucking seniors championships in like 2040 or 2050. So I'm still game for that. I'm gonna beat your ass down in the Doom 2 seniors championships.
I'll probably be dead by then. So don't worry. But if not, cool. I'll see you then. But for me, it's just like, it doesn't matter. To be honest with you, the reason why I'm not going to make this proclamation of I'm leaving is because my friends are here. And that's just that simple. Like, it's my friends are, So that's why I'm not going anywhere. Even when I got sucked in and absorbed by League of Legends, like Majin Buu absorbed everybody against their will, I still stayed in contact with a lot of Doom friends. So I'll never go away. It's time for me to shift. I can't. It takes too much energy to play the game at a top level for me, and I have too many things going on in my personal life to where I can't give what I want to give. So I'm with you there, and yeah. So that's what we've got. This we're gonna wrap it up. So everybody, this is Chris, Devastation Felix. He's my good friend. This was a blast, man. We will absolutely do this again. You got anything you want to say to people before we close this out?
Oh yeah.
That's it.
Oh well. Thanks for listening to my rants and the good old catching up of times. Too bad we didn't get into the laser tag game of '06 or anything special like that, or the downtown fiascos in Halifax in 2007. But maybe that'll be interesting stories from the deep next time.
We will.
But thanks for having me. Always here in chat. It's a blast. I've known you for a long time. I've beaten your ass down and gotten my ass beaten down by you numerous times. So it's always good to catch up. And yeah, I hear you about becoming a content creator. I've obviously made some videos and guides and different things, and I'd like to do more at some point. But I think getting the historic Doom site up, I think that's something that is lacking in the community that no one else has done. That we could take a very good crack at and become the definitive authority on it with actual backups that people have in case it ever gets lost. We'll still have it.
Yep, that's the idea. All right, well, that's it, guys. Thanks again, Dev. Thanks for everybody taking the time to listen to us. Hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving.